live show, they program in silence, see, for that period of time. It's just silence playing, see, while we're doing our live thing. And then the automated thing kicks in again. So here we're doing this column shows us where we're going. 24 seconds left on this, then there's 39 seconds, and then it's us, because this is silence, right? It's us, and then the BBC News is going to kick in at 9 o'clock for 5 minutes, so we have to just stay out of the way of the automated stuff.
Wow. Okay.
Or it just collides. And then Dave Aardvark, Dave, the program director.
Okay.
He says, that was awkward. Yeah, it was. We weren't paying attention, see, because there's this. Okay, 30 seconds.
Okay.
You're going to turn on our mics and say something. And actually, the first thing is going to be to acknowledge that we're on Algonquin.
So I'll just follow your lead. I'm not sure how we're doing this. Okay, alright. Sounds good.
And then at a certain point, I'll play a song.
Okay.
And then we'll make the next plan. Okay, so 12 seconds. Here it is. It's January 2nd, 2024. Hey.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Come on, let's have a Happy New Year right here in the studio. Come on, 1, 2, 3.
Happy New Year.
Okay, we're here. We're in the studio. It's time for Tuesday Special Blend right here on CKCU 93.1 and ckcufm.com. I am Chris White, and I'm encouraging you in this brand new year to go to ckcufm.com and find what we call the playlist for this show, Tuesday Special Blend, and make a comment. Tell us how you're feeling. Tell us how you're seeing the year ahead unfolding. Because that's something I'll be talking about today on the show with you, Sheila Perry. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, and Happy New Year, Chris.
Happy New Year. And with you, Dominique Gené. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm impressed with all of us, actually, for being here at this time of day on January 2nd. And Nathanael Newton, you're here. Do you want to get close to a mic and say hello?
Hello, hello.
You might know Nathanael as the host of Monday Special Blend right here on CKCU. So, Nathanael, you're here from 8:05 to 9 every Monday. Okay, so let's get started. Let's acknowledge that we are broadcasting from the territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. This is Algonquin land. And this year, I'm going to do everything I can to keep that in mind all the time and to act on that basis. This is Algonquin land, period. Okay, so let us talk first to you, Sheila. Sheila Perry. You live in the Overbrook area, correct?
That's right.
Now, how do you characterize Overbrook when you're talking to people about it at the latest festive gathering?
Well, yeah, Overbrook's a wonderful place in Ottawa, nestled just east of the Rideau River along that area, 417, bordered by Vanier to the north and Saint Laurent Boulevard to the east.
That's called Overbrook.
Yeah, so that is the area specifically. A lot of history there, but we're in big transition with a lot of new builds, a lot of new infill. Typically, a small bungalow is coming down with at least 2, 3, maybe 4 units going in. So that densification is happening for sure. Mm-hmm. But we're a really diverse population, Chris, and that makes it very, very, very special because I think it's typical of the world that we're in, population-wise. And it's very interesting. If we were a village of 100 people, this is just something that I picked up recently from the Ottawa Neighborhood Study. We've got a population that's about 5% Indigenous, racialized about 37%.
Wow, in Overbrook.
Yeah, and born in Canada, roughly about 29%. And then if you start to look at this, the rental population really tells me a lot. There's about 61% renting.
Wow. And you're saying was it 71% not born in Canada?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you start looking at, a lot of people coming in moving into the area. Only around 39% who are homeowners. So it tells you something about the transition of people. But we're really mixed in terms of languages, English, French. There's quite a solid population there, but a lot of our Arabic, Farsi. And you're seeing this with a lot of new families coming in. So it's a special blend. It really is.
Well said.
How's that sound?
Well said, yeah. Now, you are a community developer. You've been active in the community ever since your early days back in Peterborough. Now you're here. You have run for city council twice. You've been the president of the Overbrook Community Association. And you've done all kinds of things to animate and elevate and integrate that community. And so, Sheila Perry, first of all, congrats on all that hard work.
Well, thank you. As a volunteer, though.
As a volunteer, I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, if you would, just tell us about one project that I'm aware of, which was the idea of surveying the residents a few years ago to find out what they wanted with some grant money that was available. Do you know what I'm talking about?
We've had several.
You've done that. You have the good idea of actually asking people what they want.
Yeah.
That seems like such a good idea. Well, the one I'm thinking about was what the reply was from all these people from all these different backgrounds is what we want the most is a community garden, right? And so
That's
it came
right.
to pass, right?
It did. And that's the important thing. You have to know your people. That's talking with people, having a sense of what they really want. And that's not easy to get. It's one by one. But, in that particular case, we had an empty place on the city property of the recreation center area. And it seemed to be a dark hole, a hangout. And how could we make this an animated spot? Thankfully, Just Food partnerships again, working with them very closely.
We know them, yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, and Mo, and then having a manager at the community center who said, yeah,
go for it.
Go for it. So, this is talking with people, trying to work out what can be done and applying for grants. And so we celebrated 10 years.
Of the
last
community
year.
garden.
Yeah.
Yay.
Which is amazing.
And I know there have been all kinds of positive spin-offs from that garden. Do you want to talk about some of the positive results of creating that space?
Well, it's an earthy thing, isn't it? And not to get, it is.
It's common ground.
Very
right?
much so. And, people are finding, let's put if you were renting, for example, we're seeing people who have rented, who've come into this country who had background in gardening or whatever, or interest, just missing that opportunity to work with soil and have the fruition of growth and some really interesting vegetables. Of course, it's all food related. Food security is a huge issue in the area. We have a very, very big demand over at the Rito Rockcliffe food area there. So all of that tells us that there's a real desire to have opportunities. And the fun thing I'm seeing is these are raised beds because that's the healthy way to go. They're 2.5 foot high, 4x8s, cedar boxes. So we've grown from 24, now we're up to 38 boxes. And people come in, we're seeing kids, we're seeing families, Indigenous, because we've got a high Indigenous population in our area, Inuit. It's fascinating to see who comes in. And so the produce is the beautiful thing that you see.
And you mentioned that every once in a while somebody is over there gardening or with somebody that's gardening. They drop into the community center to see what's going on and they get engaged in there as well, right?
Yeah. It's a very friendly, non-threatening kind of activity. And it's so important people have a chance to chat. We don't always see what's being done, but, people step in to clean things up. There's repairs always to be done. So it's just a sample of a very I say grassroots activity, and a space being well used. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now Dominique Gené, isn't that nice to hear? First of all, isn't that a nice story that we just heard from Sheila?
It's a beautiful story.
Oh, here, let me turn your microphone on. Okay, isn't that a nice story?
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Yeah. What does it bring to mind for you? Because I know, let's give a little bit of your background. Dominique Gené, journalism student and journalist. Like, you've been published in a whole bunch of places already. You're laughing, and a presenter at the recent event called Creative Mornings, which is fantastic. We'll talk about that at a certain point, right?
Yes.
And also, I would say, and I'm using this word more these days with various people, but I'd say all of you here are what I would call now activists. Like, you're attempting to make changes through your work and your activities. Is that correct, Dominique?
Yes, I would say so. Even though the word activist can sometimes feel like it comes with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
But I think just at the core of it, like the concept of advocating for something is activism. And I guess also because as a journalist who's also a creative, there's also a thin line that I'm walking between when am I working as a journalist and when I'm working as a creative, because there are certain things I have more freedom as a creative, as a poet, as a spoken word artist than I do as a journalist, in the sense of using my voice for things that I believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now you've had some very fascinating involvement with CKCU, with this radio station right here. And we're talking with Sheila about her work in the community. You did a fascinating project you coordinated with the Pinecrest Queensway Community Health Center. Is that the right term for it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Would you describe that project? And some of these episodes are still running on CKCU. You can find these folks. So tell us what that project was.
Yes, so that project, as you said, is a collaboration between the Pinecrest Queensway Community Center and CKCU. And the objective was to do a collaboration where we went into Pinecrest and one of the program Together We Can for Black youth, and to teach them how to make a podcast and a radio show. So that's what it was.
Oh, I didn't realize there was that educational element.
Exactly. And at first, when I first got the position, I was a bit hesitant because although I've done things with youth before, when I was in high school, I was a student aide with the ELL department. That's the English Language Learner Program. Mm-hmm. And since I came from Haiti and then I moved to Florida, I had to be in the program because I was coming from a country where the language wasn't primarily English. Mm-hmm. So because you have to take a lot of tests that says that you are okay now to leave the program, that you can be on your own in a class where you don't need the support that someone who's learning English for the second or third time in my case, mm-hmm. as a third language, I mean. So then I became a student aide in my last year, and they would send me in the classrooms that were filled with students from Haiti, from Latin America, and I would help them, whether it's in French or in Haitian Creole. So I've done some educational helping teachers before, but I had not done anything like the one I was going to do at Pinecrest.
You were a bit hesitant, you said.
I was. Because I wasn't sure, but then the students were amazing. We had an amazing program. Everyone was so eager to learn, and that was fascinating. And it was one of the most rewarding things was to see at the end all the students that were a bit, they weren't sure if they wanted to host or if they were capable to host. And we were telling them, you can pretty much do anything here. So we had them rotate. So if the first episode someone was a producer, the next one they would be the host. So we let them try out different things, and at the end they knew what they wanted to do, what they liked the most. So it was amazing.
What are the themes of those episodes that were created then?
Yes, so we did something really interesting, and the person that came up with it was the other program instructor I work with, Jaden. Jaden Dill was actually the sports editor at the Charlatan last year.
Okay.
He's amazing. So we had a first episode with the director of Pinecrest, that was Matt Tetmeyer, and we used his episode to sort of do an outline of the rest of the show. So every questions that we had was was part of an episode that we were about to do later on. So we did an episode on how to navigate post-secondary. We interviewed someone from the Black Student Alliance here at Carleton. We had amazing people. We had Adrian Harewood in terms of how to balance. I think it was how to balance self-doubt and how to know who you are. We had Kwande on identity. We had some amazing people from the community.
Did Adrian Harewood mention that he got his start right here at CKC?
Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Very
Sheila
special.
Perry, listening to that, and we're beaming, and Nathaniel's here. We're all beaming to hear what you're involved in, Dominique. Sheila, what ideas does that prompt for you? Probably do something similar in Overbrook, right?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is the youth. And I say congratulations. And there's several parallels here. The spin-offs, as I call it. Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center is part of that coalition right across the city of Ottawa of community resource centers. So you tapping into that Pinecrest area, trying to involve youth, how to engage them, fantastic. And it's finding their voice. Sometimes when they're feeling whatever, maligned, discouraged, whatever, it's that confidence that builds, and we're learning as a result. So hats off to you. And how can that be replicated in other areas? So you've got something there, Dominique. I would say, come on over. and quite seriously, I think it's a great opportunity, whether, how to just reach the youth. We were talking about this earlier. It's so important that they find a voice. And what are maybe the channels to do that? And how to get that participation so that you're not feeling left out. And I'll use one of the examples that's been really successful in our area, basketball. Presidential basketball. You may have read a bit about it, but this was a guy who started this up, and the basketball became a big forum for the guys. The challenge, though, I keep saying, is where are the gals? Where are the girls? And how do we so maybe that's a start. And maybe that's something, because you being Dominique, girls looking to you as an inspiration, just a thought. So I would say these are all opportunities, spin-offs in a great way. Talk about a blend that you've got started here, Chris.
Here we go, discussion. Now, Sheila, you are an educator by background, and you've been a principal, have you?
Yes.
High school principal?
All levels.
All levels.
Yeah. Most in the intermediate teenage area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we were talking about that, and we thought about this Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song that might be appropriate. Should we play it?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's
Love
play
it. It's a tribute to Crosby.
Yeah. And
In
all about
memoriam.
kids and education.
It is.
Yeah.
And the role we have to play.
There we go. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and happy 2024. We have a whole new year to do something positive with. That's the way I'm looking at it. And Sheila Perry, I'm hearing you talking with Dominique Gené and making plans already.
Well,
While Crosby,
talent.
Stills, Nash and Young are singing away there, you were making plans.
Yeah, well, this is where you get the opportunity to discuss sometimes with people who have a real talent, I would say, or an interest. And obviously Dominique has made some efforts to do this and reach out to the Pinecrest area. And I think with some success, and you take these little successes one by one and replicate them, but try to find the right fit. So we were just talking about the need for some of the girls, for example. How do we get involved? I was talking earlier a little bit about presidential basketball, which is such a success for the guys. And to this day, these guys are playing regularly, use the community center, etc. But what could it be that might open doors for the girls? And, that part of that is staying in school, careers, but also finding their voices more than anything else, and that confidence about what they can do in the community. So who knows, Dominique? I was suggesting that she might want to replicate this over at Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center. They have something called an incubator lab, and that's another discussion. The other thing that you might want to know is the Rideau High School is now a hub, and it was a major fight to find resources to keep that open with the public school board, because originally they wanted to close it. The kids were all moved over to Gloucester. But the beautiful story, 5-6 years later, even through COVID, the place is full of nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, let's list off a few of the entities that are in that Rideau Community Hub. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
On Saint Laurent.
It's the Rideau Hub. So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center is one group, part of that coalition. But you've got Volunteer Ottawa in there. Social Planning Council of Ottawa's in there. Odawa, which is an Indigenous group. You've got the Inuit in there. So there are all these different organizations, and it's all ages, which is absolutely wonderful to see. Orchestra, which was the musical beginnings of children and
Orchestra, yeah.
Orchestra,
yeah.
Fantastic. Giving them instruments to learn how to play, and that gives you a whole other opportunity. So, Chris and I were chatting a little earlier about the idea of music. This is another thing that we'd love to see. When you've got a space, assets like a high school, you've got gyms, you've got the usually a cafeteria or spaces. You've got, in that case, they had bands, they had a theater room. So all these spaces that can be utilized or rented out or for special projects. So this is where the big dream comes in, I call it, of utilization for all ages. And pretty much every day that place is being used, which is really great. As I mentioned earlier, there's a big food bank in there, very needed, but it's not the only thing that's going on there.
You're calling it a hub, Sheila.
Yeah.
And why are you using that word? So there are a lot of organizations, and diverse and addressing many needs and all ages. And what makes it a hub?
Well, you're pulling people together. The hub is a wonderful, you can use different terms, community center, some people use that. But another place, and I'll just use the example, is the Churchill Community Center. And politicians were on board to get housing on that property. It's a former T.P. Maxwell school. And it's amazing what's in there. You've got health in there, and that's the one thing I would love to see in our Rideau Hub. Interestingly enough, Ottawa Public Health used it as an immunization center for COVID, during COVID. So you saw the need because people would come to that spot. They knew it was easy access. Mm-hmm. So the hub is a drawing card, and it's not a new invention. These are across the province internationally. It's just being smart about the assets that you've got, and you can't break the bank by duplicating things all over the place. And I think we're in that kind of, I'll use it, fiscal management side, which makes good sense to utilize. And I'm actually thrilled that this has become a positive when it was such a negative, when it's like a death in the family when you close a school. I mean, it's tough. If you've ever been through that as a kid, you know, your identity as a teenager, having that space, your teachers, your friends, etc., having that displaced, it's tough. So the positive on the hub side is definitely a space that's become utilized. So I invite anybody, it's open, come on over and see it in action, and think about it. Actually, we are, the newest really good news is, you know, the family theaters, films, that's now using the auditorium. for family movies. Isn't that cool?
That is fascinating.
So you never know what can come out of this.
Okay, we'll be back with you, Sheila Perry, you, Dominique Gené, you, Nathanael Newton. We're going to get you on a microphone here too. But first, let's listen to the song, and then we'll morph into the BBC World Service news.
This is listener-supported radio, CKCU 93.1 FM.
And we're back. I'm Nathanael Newton here with Sheila Perry and Dominique. How did you pronounce your name?
Gené.
Gené. Okay, I'm not so great with names sometimes, but
It's okay. You can
I get
just
people
go
to
by
say it for them. So I actually first became aware of you at the Creative Mornings event that was a couple of weeks ago now. That was my first Creative Mornings, and I found it was amazing. I was really impressed. The feel, the vibe, the way the community there felt was really positive. Even though we talked about some rather strong and deep things, it was a really wonderful experience. I think I was listening to you do a performance of one of your poems, and I looked up your Instagram and realized my sound was still on, and probably half the auditorium heard me. I had to quickly try to turn down the volume because whenever your video started playing. But it was really a heartfelt performance. Do you want to talk about some of the what's it called? Blanking. The
pieces.
Methods that comes to how you write them. Where do they come from?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, because I would say that I don't have, like, my creative process looks different every time. So, but I would say that because I'm working on a specific project, I try to be more consistent. But how I go about it is usually, sometimes it's just, I have an outline for this project of what I want to talk about. Usually when I'm writing poetry, I just sort of wait until I'm inspired, or until I'm inspired by many things. It could be a song I'm listening to, or like a movie, or conversation with a friend, and then it inspires some things in me. It's like, oh, I can write a piece about that. But for this project, because it has an end, and it has a beginning and an end, so I want to know exactly what I want to say in terms of the points I want to touch on. But the fascinating thing is that at the end of it, I don't know what the poem is going to look like until I finish writing it. I have an idea. Okay, for example, I want to write about girlhood. The project is about girlhood. Okay, so I have an outline of what aspects of girlhood I want to touch on. But then when I start writing a poem, until I'm done with it, I do not know where it's going to go. I just have a vague idea of it. Mm-hmm. So that always fascinates me, because I don't really know how to explain it. It just happened that as I'm writing, sort of like my mind is opening and things are just coming to me. And I didn't really know that I was going to write about this until I'm writing about it. I know it sounds very cliche, but that's just what happens.
It's not too cliche, actually. I've heard that from different types of artists that work with visual media or solid like objects, carving. For example, somebody will say, like, I don't know what it's going to be. It's the wood is inside. It's inside the wood, or it's inside the marble, and it's going to come out, and we'll find out what it is once it's done.
Exactly.
I kind of enjoy drawing a little bit of line art on paper and filling in just lines and seeing where it goes, and you never know where it's gonna end up. It's just it's very organic. It's part of the process, kind of being creative. Is you don't really know what it's going to be. It's more just a flow of your consciousness that comes out. And I really appreciated some of the themes that you were going through in your poems. Did you have any that you wanted to share with us or talk about today?
Yes, actually I do. So the project I'm working on is titled An Obituary to My Girlhood. So I am taking on this project because, well, I'm 22, I'm turning 23. Oof, this year already. Okay, that's scary. But that's way later. I don't have to worry about this until September. But during this summer, I started thinking about girlhood. And there's this article that was published, I I still can't believe it's a new year. I'm tempted to say this year, and I realize it's January of the new year already. But last year, how 2023 was the year of the girl, because we had the Barbie movie that was very, very girly. We had all of those albums and music that was all about being girl, and we saw an increase in women just tapping into the girlhood as a way to return to things that they were maybe judged or shamed for doing, whether it's dressing in all pink or doing things that feels really mundane but that they weren't able to do. And especially if when you were a girl you didn't have a chance to live out your childhood, then you're at an age where you want to go back to that. So all of this going on, and I was also personally thinking about girlhood, what it means to be a girl. And as I'm a baby adult, I will say. So as I'm in that stage, I wanted to sort of close that chapter of being a girl. And the way for me to do that was to poetry. Just wanted to talk about things that shaped my girlhood experience. And once I'm done, I can close the chapter and say, now I am finally a woman and I'm okay with that. Is the idea behind it. But I do have a piece, so.
Well, yeah, that I'd be happy to hear it.
Okay. So this will probably be the opening piece in the project, because the project is supposed to be audiovisual, but we'll see. It's an ongoing thing. We'll see when it comes out, but you'll be the first to know.
All right.
All right, so this one is titled This Gaping Wound Needs No Introduction. I'm only a girl until the grief have been sheltering, spread in my bone marrow, and I no longer recognize where I end and it begins. How do I get it to obey me, to understand that as long as it lives under my skin, it must do as I say? I resent that it bears the face of the men that gave it to me, while they get to deny its existence and I have to nurture it. And maybe if you love a monster the way mothers do their abusive sons, you can convince yourself that it's human. Tell me, mirror, tell me about the daughters who become undone in the dead of the night, then put themselves back together by sunrise. Before the soft pinkish daylight sneak into the room, they'd already scraped the grief off the floor and repurpose it into willpower. Tell me about the ugliest thing they did to be embraced, all the ways they cradled the brokenness in their arms, a metaphor for the touch starvation. But isn't that what girlhood is? Severed limbs, cracked smiles, and sunshine-filled scars? We should have known our fate back then, watching the women before us shift into shelters, into therapy couches, into punching bags high. I'm only a girl, and all the girls are grave diggers with trauma that never stays buried. Thank you.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones that you performed at the Creative Mornings, and I think you got to the second line and you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was like, whoa, what are we listening to today? The theme of that show was pain, so it really, there's a lot of pain and a lot of emotion that goes into that. And I feel like we need to listen to the voices of people that have been traditionally marginalized and ignored and, like you said, turned into a punching bag. And it's, I don't know, what else can I say? It's well said.
Thank you. And that Creative Mornings also pushed me to think about my relationship with pain, because that's one of the questions the host asked me. And writing poetry for me had always been about just understanding how I feel, because my upbringing was it didn't give me much room to explore my feelings, my emotions. It was mainly just get an education, stay focused, because you have things you want to do. And unfortunately, in that society, there wasn't any space for both of those things to exist, that you can still focus on your education, you can still work towards your dreams, and also because your emotional development is as important as your intellectual one as well. So because there were not enough rooms for that, I turned to poetry. So then it sort of become a subconscious thing. I didn't really think about it. I was just writing until people asked me about it, and I realized that my girlhood experience was, in fact, a huge part of it was in fact painful. And the reason why I am focusing on that aspect is because those are not things that we really talk about. At least where I come from, we don't really talk about the painful part of it. It's because you need to be grateful. There's a lot of gratitude that you need to express, and in that gratitude, there's not enough space for you to criticize, because you can't. It's really hard for you to be grateful and critic at the same time. And so I would say with that project, that's what I'm doing. Although I am very grateful for all the amazing experiences I had, all the amazing support system I had. I always had people that believed in my potential, that believed in me. I never lacked that. But at the same time, there were things in that girl experience, whether it's a result of the patriarchy, whether it's sexism, whether it's body image, all of those things that were actually there and that I can't pretend didn't exist, that I can't pretend weren't a part of it. So this is really about just pulling all the dirt under the rug and sweep it out of the room, essentially.
I identify with that so much. I grew up in a very conservative, traditional household with a whole bunch of kids, and we weren't allowed to go to school, and they tried to control everything we thought about, and I had to spend a lot of my adulthood kind of unlearning and relearning and becoming what I would consider a better person, even though I had to overcome all these, I would say, backwards ideas. It was a learning experience in a way that I would, like you say, it's you're grateful and you're critical of it at the same time, because it's made you who you are as a person, while at the same time maybe you wouldn't have preferred to go through some of these experiences, and some of them were very painful and horrifying even, but they've helped to shape you as a person, and you've become a better person because of it, and are able to then pass on this knowledge to other people. And I feel like some of the experiences you talked about, from coming from Haiti and then living in Florida and moving up to Canada eventually, it's a huge journey. It's wonderful to see and wonder what you'll become in the future, because you've got a whole lot of you're very eloquent, and I think the whole audience was just on the edge of their seat, amazed with the words that you were saying.
They were. No, it was, and I would say that's the most rewarding thing about being a creative, being a spoken word artist, is when people come up to you afterward. Because at least when I first started doing it, I was doing it for me. It was about me. It was about understanding myself. But then once I started sharing it, I realized that it's a lot bigger than me. And that's the beauty of it. And there's also a responsibility that comes with that. But it's a responsibility that I am grateful to have, because at Creative Mornings, I was amazed by the impact that my pieces had on people, because they were coming up to me. Some people even told me that as I was speaking, they were writing, and they haven't been writing in months. It's like, it's amazing. I couldn't have imagined that it would have had this impact, but it did. So I'm really grateful. And one thing people were really shocked about was my age. Like, I can't believe you're this young. I'm like, yep. Yeah, I am. But yeah, so it was amazing. Thank you.
I think people underestimate the younger generation. They've got a lot of negative ideas, when I find that they're learning faster and more quickly than maybe myself personally was able to. And it's inspiring to see and to imagine how the society is going to evolve through a lot of situations coming up are not going to be easy, but I'm inspired to see where we'll go.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back into the work that you're doing, Sheila, with the community centers, with the food banks, with the education, and I really value a lot of the work that people do for the community in that way. Like, I feel like we need to talk to some people from the food bank and talk to some people that are working in the community like you are, and kind of inspire people at the same time as giving them ideas of how they can be more involved and more of a positive influence on their community.
It's interesting as you're speaking about this, Nathaniel. It brings to mind some of the messages that we pick up. Some people live in a world where they expect to be served. And one of the messages that I thought was so powerful over Christmas time was, how do we serve? And can we make that a bit of a motto in our own lives? And the other part that I love what you've talked about here, Dominique, is the creativity that is out there, or how do we tap that? And so my question to you as an educator, I'll put my educator hat on, okay, is how is it that you got to the writing stage? Was there someone who inspired you, or were there circumstances or is it a combination?
I would say it's a combination because one thing I know, even from primary school, is that I was never a numbers person. I was always a letter. Like I always liked like we call it les belles lettres. Like I love literature. I love writing. So I think it's a combination of people that inspire me, because I had, like I said before, I always had, whether it's teachers, educators, other people in my community that believed in me, that believed in my potential. And I think that they saw that in me early on, that I loved writing, that I loved reading. I was a reader. I was always reading. And they kept pushing me. Like, they would give me books. I was always in the library. So it's a combination of that. It's also a combination of circumstance, because there are things that, like creativity, can come from necessity. It comes from, I have something to say. I need to use my voice, and I need an outlet. And so when you have that necessity to express yourself, that desire to say something, it's the creativity is born out of that necessity. So that's why I'm saying it's a combination of I already had that I already had people that saw that in me, but also circumstances, because it's not, I don't think it's all innate. It's also something I developed throughout the years, that the more I do it. So it is a combination.
So the mentoring comes to mind,
Definitely.
too, and these people that are special in our lives, you know, without getting into all the names of people, but we can all recall people who had a major influence on what you decided. And I'm thinking a little bit out loud here when I say I think you're the inspiration here, or can be that catalyst, Dominique, for many people. And I think this is a whole plan. And when the show's over, we're going to have some good chats. But particularly, and I don't want it to be sexist, but I do see a need for some of the women or the girls finding their places, and the vulnerability. And I do see this with the guys too. You know, the creativity element. How do you voice that and speak? Whether it's in written word, published word, whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, and I know great teachers will extract that, hopefully along the line in our English classes or literature classes. But where does it go after school? Or is there something of a stepping off point to get this?
I would say like it's on an individual basis, because after you foster that creativity in your student as an educator, you can't really imagine, or maybe you can imagine, but I think like it's less of a means to an end. That it's less about the outcome, but it's about that, especially for girls, for women, that they learn that their voices are important. It doesn't matter if later on they go into construction or engineering, that they know they have a way of voicing their opinions, their thoughts, their creativity, their desires. So it's really just about making sure that they know that, making sure that they know their potential is limitless. Mm-hmm. That, as we say, the sky's the limit. Aim higher, and then if you fall, you will be among the stars. They said they know it, and whatever they do afterwards is entirely up to them. But the important thing is that they know that now I can speak up, and there is no one that can silence me. You know?
Yeah. For sure. And it doesn't have to be out there in big public. It could be as simple as writing journaling,
Exactly.
which is something I think is so important for every kid to start early in life and carry on. But you never know what'll come out of this. So
Hey, look at me.
there
Who'd
you
have
are,
thought?
the inspiration.
Wow. It's great to listen to you talk. Did you have another piece that you wanted to share with us?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, so I don't know if you would rather me stay on theme. I can, because I do have I have my other piece as well that I
Whatever
also
you're feeling, we'll leave that up to you.
Okay. All right, so this is also part of my project, and I believe that's also one of the pieces I performed there as well. And yeah, it's really close to my heart. So this one is titled 404 Body Not Found. The hands came without warning, brushing, pulling, thrusting, and your body surrendered. You were never yours to begin with. Nothing you carried ever belonged to you, so you let them tear you apart until you found the strength to grab whatever's left from the grip and run, hide, forget. Monsters are only real if you name them, don't you know? But here you are, scrubbing fingerprints off your skin, plunging your body underwater, then hanging it out on a rope to dry, because holiness is an art and practice makes perfect. You thought you'd get it right by now, but you can't help wanting to deliver yourself in the first hands that promise not to bruise you. The trick is to let yourself fall. You might just fly, they say, but do they know that little girls get their wings clipped from birth and are left to crawl to their redemption? What an exhausting journey it must have been, chasing the boys down the streets, scaling the walls with them, skulls and knees smashing against concrete, in you pointing to the hurt as if to say, all I've ever wanted was to be free and wild like them. But what is it about girls that get the wolves circling the house before the blood even starts to spill? Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself when the ugliness breaks through the surface, leaving you half beast, half human. When the sheer memory starts eating up the child within you, remember the damage has already been done, and so has the saving. So all you have to do now is breathe. Open up your lungs and let the air in. I promise it won't suffocate you. All you have to do now is breathe. Thank you.
That was so wonderful. There's so much heart and pain and soul and thoughts and things in that what kind of, I don't feel qualified to talk about it, but I'm happy that you were able to share that with us.
Thank you.
So if anyone wants to follow your career, what's your socials? What's your information you'd like if somebody to follow you, to look you up?
Okay, so mainly right now it's Instagram. Because of this project, I am thinking of expanding, but we'll see. So my Instagram is my name, Dominique, DOMINIQUEGNE. So that's my username, at Dominique GNE. So I'm on Instagram, and like I said, I'm really excited for this project. I don't know what it's gonna look like when it's done, but I'm excited. And yeah, but thank you so much for giving me the time and the space. And thank you, Sheila. It was a pleasure getting to know you, getting to know more about what you do in the community. And I know we're going to chat after this, so I'm really excited. Thank you, Nathaniel. Thank you, Chris. It was really amazing to be here this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Sheila, we have about a minute left. Did you want to tell anybody if they're interested in volunteering or helping out with what you're working with, how they can get a hold of you or anything like that?
Oh, well, there's lots of avenues. I would encourage anybody out there, first of all, to find a way that they can contribute in the community. And you can do that in many ways. We're overbrook.ca website. So that's for people just in our area. But in every community, there's a community resource center. And I would encourage everybody to go on either ottawa.ca, which is the website which will take you directly to any of the community resource centers. And if you want to do some help with the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Center, come on over to 815 Saint Laurent Boulevard and drop in. It's on the bus routes. There's always needs in the food area and all the nonprofits. Thank you.